city's website, but it has changed. And I think the old link is still there, so you can accidentally hit the old one, which I think is a dinosaur. But the new one is very user-friendly, and I'm sure that Tom is he's got further changes for it. But the calendar's much better. There's a lot of information there. I encourage you to look at that. I guess that's about it. Everybody else pretty much was on target. And you did a very good job of quickly covering it, so there's a lot of information there. And I encourage everybody to look at it.
I really didn't want to put y'all to sleep, although it's extremely important.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I just think it's wonderful to see so many people here tonight and have the opportunity to hear about this strategic plan. I did not vote for it. I felt that $20,000 being spent right now during these economic times and with the needs of our citizens and the city right now, that this was not the time to do it. I think we probably all would agree, and I pointed this out at the planning meeting, that our biggest problems, crime, and that came out in the survey, that's the biggest concern for our citizens, and rental properties. The city has had some legislation, draft legislation, to set some standards for our rental properties, to make sure that our neighborhoods remain viable, and we've had that for about 15 years, and nothing has been done about it. At that time, I remember it was about 40% rental properties, which was a problem at that time. It impacts the school system with children moving in and out. It impacts the neighborhoods. If you have absentee landlords that don't maintain the properties, it lowers the values of the properties around it. So rental properties is a big problem, and right now we're up to, I'll bet right now, because I keep seeing rental signs pop up in our single-family homes in my neighborhood, I'll bet we're up to close to 65% now of rental properties. Last time I heard it was 60 to 65%. So that is a big problem, and zoning variances that have eaten away at our neighborhoods, cause traffic problems in our neighborhoods, and our parks. How do we protect them so that they're not developed? There's been talk about putting a hotel on our Whitehall Community Park. How do we protect those protections? We did get something on the charter during the last election where at least it would have to go to 3 votes before the city could transfer property or sell property, whereas before they could do it in one reading. But we need deed restrictions like Columbus has to protect our parks. Whitehall Community Park, and I've said over and over again, is the jewel of this city. You know, how do we improve it? How do we protect it? How do we provide, and that's our biggest green space, a place for citizens who don't do sports but want to take walks in our parks, that we have our own park rather than go somewhere else. And so these are some of them, and I've said all along, crime, rental properties, parks, zoning variances, and we didn't need a strategic plan to tell us that, and these should be our number one priority. I'm a little concerned with some of the things in this under opportunities, and I don't quite understand what this means. Columbus increased to 2.5% tax. When we were first looking at hiring someone to do this strategic plan, I thought, well, I'm going to go online and see what's online. Surely some other city in Ohio has already done one. Maybe we could just look at that, and maybe we could just use that and save $20,000. And when I did find one and I looked at it, the big thing in that one was to raise the income tax. So I have to question, why is this in here under an opportunity? Is that the city's...
That 2.5% was so people could move and Whitehall would be more attractive because our tax rate is 2%. So if Columbus raised theirs to 2.5, the opportunity is that people would want to move here. So that's what that was.
So it was an opportunity.
No, it's an opportunity so people would want to move here because of Columbus's income tax.
Well, that's where they were, actually.
Mr. President, just a quick thought, and maybe Kim, you could address
I'm
this.
not
Well, the $20,000 that was appropriated comes out of an account that's earmarked simply for redevelopment study, and that's all it can be used for.
It was out of general funding. Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, if we don't deal with the problem with the rental properties, if we don't deal with the crime, we should be spending money on more police officers, more programs to do something about the crime. Because what I see in here more on the crime issue is it's a marketing problem. It's a perception problem. Instead of, you know, that the Whitehall citizens, there's not really crime, there's nothing to worry about. And so I think we need to deal with those first and you know, how they rank these. They gave us these colored stars. And
It wasn't they, it was us.
Yes.
It wasn't them.
Yes, how we.
We
Yes,
ranked it.
yes, including me, you're right.
Yes, thank you.
Then we had colored stars, and one star was worth 5 points, and then another color was worth another, and there were 100 and some hanging all over the walls, and you had to remember what color it was and what the ranking was, and try to remember everything that was up there. So I'm not quite sure this is a clear picture of what the number one priorities are. So that is pretty much what I have to say on this. So thank you, Mr. President.
You are certainly one. I think there is, a lot when we look at the items you mentioned. Two top ones that were in our top 22 are reducing juvenile crime. And that, of the point scale that we had, it had a 22-point scale, which put it in top 5, if I don't recall. Another one was addressing the issue of non-owner-occupied homes, which could be classified as rental property, or it may be classified as an abandoned property. So, it does address both of those, and that too fell pretty high in our category.
Well, is this going to be dealt with, number one is the top priority, or how is this going to be, where you have your top 22 goals?
I think we've initially worked, as we discussed, the first 22 at any point in time. And again, as things either change or something else becomes a different priority, what maybe at one point was classified lower than a 22. Again, we're just talking about a rating scale, just to start working on something that's important to have done in the community.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
maybe you could share, I don't have it in front of me, but we did develop an aggressive timeline with dates. And,
There are.
all of them were kind of concurrent. All the 22 were happening at the same time from different departments.
And again, if something changes in our economy, whether it be today or tomorrow or even yesterday, we may have to change these 22. They may be these 22 become the bottom 22, and the other 40 become the top one. So, it's just again, I want to repeat this not just for our own benefit, but for everyone's benefit. It's a guide for decision making. It's not the decision. It's a guide for decision making. So, Mr. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. President.